What's up, OOUXers? Sophia here, and I wanted to make a hopefully pretty quick video. We'll see how quick it is. Walking through some proposed improvements, improvements to the object map that I think everybody that is practicing or learning object-oriented UX is really going to appreciate. This video is especially for my students in the University of Alabama, Huntsville workshop last week. So that was like, where are we in the year? March-ish of, don't even know what month it is, March-ish of 2020. So you guys were awesome participants and helped Amanda and I think through some things that we could do to improve this notation system so that it's easier to learn and also just easier to look at and easier to go through the process. So getting to that beautiful OOUXE structure as quickly as possible. And of course, this video is also geared especially toward my first cohort of the OOUX certification, who is learning all this stuff right now as I change it right under your feet. Let's say improve it. Improve it right under your feet. We're all in this together, right? So a lot of these changes actually came not just from the workshop at University of Alabama at Huntsville last week. They came also from going through the certification course, teaching this stuff, and seeing some problems, not just in creating the object models or the entity relationship models, but also me going through them quickly and reading them and having to go through those models quickly. Pause the video for a second. I'm going to bring up some of those models. Okay, so if we go into our network for the certification and we go into the discovery round of relationships, we see all these beautiful models. And I mean, everybody's just done such a great job of them. But like you can see Amber here she did such a beautiful job. She even was color coding these, obviously to help her read it better, to help me read it better. But the fact that she felt the need to color code them tells me that somehow the model is breaking. Also, when you start creating all your connections, things get really messy. Basically, with this type of model, you're going to hit a wall. You're going to hit a wall where the more complex your system is, it becomes unreadable, actually. So I've always encouraged, okay, well, at this round, like, don't worry about all your connections because we're going to handle that in the object mapping. The real value of this was really showing that cardinality, but what we discovered last week is we can kind of mash these things up and show that one-to-many or zero-to-many or zero-to-one relationship. We can bring that into the object map. So why not take what's great about this diagram and then leave the rest, leave what doesn't work, and just get into the object mapping sooner. So this is a thing that this kind of diagram here is something that, like, if you want to do it, sure, but this is something that I'm pretty sure I'm going to phase out of the Orca process so that we can get straight into object mapping. And I'm going to show you how that works, and I'm going to show you also how that kind of lends itself a little bit more to natural language. Also, the fact that these lines go both ways, even for me sometimes, if it's late at night or if I'm looking at a lot of these, I get mixed up on which way to go. So you can see here, Carolyn's done a beautiful job with this, but she went ahead and labeled everything too. She put it into natural language. So we've got color coding, we've got labels, like kind of like these crutches to make this model a little bit more readable. So it's a historic model within the development environment. It's useful, and I've tried to adopt it into the Orca process as a precursor to getting into the object map. But you know what? We're just going to take what works and leave the rest. So let's hop back over to what we did here. So this, for those that weren't in the workshop last week, the University of Alabama, Huntsville wanted to work on redesigning their counseling site. So basically where students would go if they want to make a counseling appointment, if they need emergency help with something, like where do you find the suicide hotline? So it's really important that this is going to be a great experience, at least an easy to navigate experience, right? We want it to be something that is not confusing. So right now the site could definitely use some work. So it's pretty awesome to dig in and see how we can make it better. So the objects that we ended up with were counselors, resources, events, services, and crises. So a crisis being something like homesickness or I'm in an abusive relationship, like the actual thing you're dealing with. Services, I think that there's really only 2, maybe 3 instances of this, but this is this kind of umbrella thing that the counselors offer. So group counseling, private counseling. I think they also offer parent counseling too, so if the parent is concerned. So there might be a few other ones, but these are these kind of like big macro umbrella things that are offered by the counselors. Then they have events. So the confusing thing and the thing that we got hung up on last week, excuse me, is that the group counseling, they actually have all the events posted. So we were a little bit confused on like where there was a difference between the service and the event. So this an instance of a service being group counseling, while an event being a group meeting for toxic relationships at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. So that being the specific event that would ladder up to that group counseling service. And another example of an event might be free massages for final stress. That would be a really nice one to go to. On the site right now for the one-on-one, where's that? The private counseling or the one-on-one counseling, those events, of course, are not represented on the site. That goes to a form, and then it goes into kind of the email world, or you call in, and then you make the appointment over the phone. So we definitely, my yellows, look, this is actually green. So these are my calls to action right here. They did the Post-it note app. Yeah, see, they're green. They're green. Just made them all yellow. But definitely a call to action for this would be schedule an appointment, but there's no logged in state where like a student would see all their appointments, at least not yet. And we didn't tackle that for now. Going to resources, so what's the difference between a resource and a service? So a resource, the way we define that is something that is created either outside of the organization. So they have a resource that they recommend is this TAO app, which is a self-help app. But potentially this could be books, PDF downloads. Some of them actually might even be created by the counselors, and they can still live on the site. So things that you might download and print, a book you might buy, an app you might download, that kind of thing. And then, of course, we have counselors. So we have Dr. Sophia Prater, Dr. Amanda Worthington. Those are not real counselors at University of Huntsville. I keep saying University of Huntsville, University of Alabama, Huntsville. Okay, so those were our objects, and a couple things just to. Well, actually, no. I'm just going to go ahead and jump in, and then I'm going to back up to a few other things that we've added. So it's not just about how to squoosh in the object modeling into the object map so that we can just kind of get away from the spaghetti diagram. So in kind of a retrospective, basically Amanda and I drinking wine after the workshop and then riffing on it the next morning even more. We started thinking about how you could actually integrate the really kind of clean crow's feet notation where we have 0 to many or 1 to many. Actually just put it right there in your object map. So what you can do, and this is actually combining multiple steps too. So if you guys are in the course right now, you haven't gotten to this yet. This is the object relationship matrix. Which we are going to talk about. But this actually kind of just simplifies and collapses that matrix and the spaghetti model all into the object map. So basically what you just need to do is as you're going through and thinking about relationships, you can just kind of go down the line and you say, okay, how does a resource fit within a counselor? So we can have 0 to many resources authored. It was also really helpful to draw a really quick like icon, and then you can actually repeat that icon to show, okay, I'm on the counselor page. I can see Sophia Prater. I can contact her. And now I can see all the resources that she's authored right there. Okay. And I can see that she might not have any resources. This might be a 0. It might be 1. It might be many. Um, and then crisis is specializing in. So basically, I'm going down the line here. Mine are out of order. So I might go resource and then event. Okay, now we're down here. Events hosting. So I can see that Sophia might be hosting 0 to many events. I have a question mark on that. I'm going to get to those question marks in a second. And then crisis is specializing in services that this counselor offers. Also a question mark on that. Like, do counselors say, like, I only do one-on-one counseling, or I only do group counseling? Are all the counselors involved with all the types of services? If so, then like you wouldn't necessarily need to specify that. It would just be implied. And really the specialization comes at the crisis level. So put a question mark on that one. Put some really kind of weird question marks on that one. Okay, so let's do this one. I think this one is in a little bit better order. But really what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to hit every single intersection, which is what the matrix helps you do, which we didn't get to that. So UAH students, we did not get to the matrix, but really all the matrix helps you do is explore every possible connection. If you just go down the line and loop back around, you're going to do that through this exercise. So if I'm in resource, I can say, okay, how does events fit under resource? So events are this that feature this resource. So this is a book. Let's say it is this. What book did we recommend? What did we give an example for? Codependency Be Gone. So we're doing a book club on Codependency Be Gone. So maybe the events of the book club event would show up there. Or the author is coming to speak. Maybe that event would show up there. So this is probably usually 0. But if there is an event that is related to the resource, how awesome would that be to create that connection? Crises that this resource helps with. So if this is Codependency Be Gone, maybe it's homesickness and the abusive relationship, all the things that this resource can help with. And then counselor who authored this resource. So if that is a case, we had that, I think, did we lose that one over here? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Resources authored. So the other side of that line, basically, if this was one of those spaghetti diagrams, we'd have the counselor has 0 to many resources authored, and then the resource is going to have 1 or 0 to 1 counselor who authored. Now we get into some weird notation right here. So this is a work in progress. Okay. This is like 3 or 4 days ago that, the revelation that we can combine those spaghetti diagrams, or at least the good part of the spaghetti diagrams, with the object map. So the problem here, we get the woman symbol here, which is really 0 to 1. But when you have it vertical, like you can see playing around here, you can see real close with my terrible handwriting, like doing like a little kind of hook thing so that the 1 is not sideways. But we thought about maybe like comes off from the side or something like that, but it really is kind of like coming from the top. So yeah, still working on like how that could work. Maybe this is fine, or maybe you just write it out in this type of notation. This is a lot faster and I think more visual. But yeah, our 1 gets turned on its side. You can see I'm playing with like, maybe 1 to many like that. So yeah, feedback definitely would be helpful on what you think, or maybe you can figure out a better way to make this diagramming system work within the beauty of an object map. And then related resources. So we can go, okay, events on a resource, services on a resource, that doesn't make sense. Crisis on a resource, counselors on a resource, now resources on a resource. So related resources might definitely be something that we would want. Then we just go into some other core content and metadata. All right, so for event, we can have so service doesn't make a whole lot of sense at that kind of really umbrella level. Again, it would be the crisis. So crisis is that this event is relevant to, looping back over to counselors. I got a little more methodical as I went down the map. So then we have counselors hosting, and then I have a question like, is it usually just one main counselor that's hosting? And like if other counselors come, awesome. Or do you need that to be multiple? And is a counselor always hosting? Do you have, is this maybe never zero? Do you always have at least one counselor hosting the event? Resources that are involved in the event. So then this got me thinking like, okay, you can have the handouts of the event, like the PDF download that might help you, or any kind of handouts that were given out at the event. Maybe they're also hosted there on the event page. But what about like homework? Like read this before coming to the event. Potentially even like release forms, that type of thing, might be considered a resource as well. And then looping back around to related events. So if this is an event on codependency, do we show, oh, here's some other upcoming events that really focus on codependency? All right, I'm not going to go through the rest of these. Hopefully you're kind of getting this and seeing potentially how this could be really helpful of mashing up really just getting rid of the spaghetti diagram. I've been using it for about a year now. It was not always a part of the OUX process. Then I wanted to get to that relation, because the problem with this, my main problem with this, with showing relationships in the object map, is that it doesn't show cardinality as well, but now it does with this notation system or just writing it in. And also it's like a weird combination of more abstract and less abstract. Like this is actually, if you're thinking about this as like a detail page, in my head, it feels less abstract than the model. The model does give you that like nice bird's eye view. And some people, like, I don't know, for a while it felt like it was really working, and then it just like stopped working as well. So let me know your thoughts. Is the object model, the spaghetti diagram, something that you think is a really important step that should be kept in? Or does this cover our bases, and maybe a little bit more elegantly if we can just get that notation system right, where really instead of having the line that is kind of has the notation on either ends of the line, we can just kind of say it as a sentence by reading our map. Counselors have 0 to many resources authored. A resource has 0 to 1 counselors who authored it. Let's talk about this stuff up here. So another bonus improvement that came out of last week. This is something that has been the differentiation between lists and the actual single cookie cutter object, the template for the event, and instances has been something that for people that are learning OUX has been notoriously confusing, especially when we get to things like the calendar and the individual event. Also another one, like let's say location. Let's say the counseling center had multiple locations across campus. So let's say we had location as an object. Maybe map would get really confounded with location. So I've always been reticent to talk about lists until later on, until we get to like, let's design our main navigation. Let's think about the flow of how we get from a list to a detail, and then to another detail, and then back up to another list. That usually comes later in the process, but I've sort of caved. And in caving, I realized this is actually super, super helpful to go ahead and early on get it out of your system and define what is a list of each of these things. So a list of counselors, that's your faculty, right? And I can even draw, okay, here's my faculty, and here's one of them is this thing. And then I have a list of resources. Maybe that's my library. So resource. Oop, one of them is this thing. And then we get into the structure of that single resource. All right, a list of events is probably going to be some sort of calendar. And then I select one of those calendars and I go to the individual event. List of services, maybe it's just our services or how ways we can help or something like that. One of those services goes to this thing. And then finally, list of crises. Maybe it's like, what's the problem? Problems you might be dealing with. You see the list of crises, and here's the structure of one of those individual crises. So let me know what you think about that as well. Really excited to get any feedback on just early on in the first steps of defining your object. I was even thinking that this could be in that discovery objects, like as we are doing our initial definition of what these objects are, like go ahead and get it out of your system. What is a list of these things called? Okay, now that we've defined it, we can make sure to differentiate it from a calendar and an individual event. And the last little thing that came out of last week, guys, the workshop was amazing for us. Hope it was amazing for you. We learned a lot, and these three, I'm about to get to the third, I think are going to be just really great improvements for the object mapping process. So the third one is having a parking lot for questions. Let me flip back over here. The Post-it note app did not want to pick that up. So one thing that I've always said during the discovery round of Orca is you're going to come up with more questions than answers. And that's okay. Like you're going to get clarity on a lot of things for sure, but it is a great way to suss out questions that are going to come up in the future. You're just preempting them and you're getting them as sooner rather than later. So you're getting them at the sticky note phase as opposed to like when you're down the wireframing path. So it's really a great way to just shine the light on all those little bits of complexity or the things you don't know. Going through the process helps bubble all those things up where really those questions just have nowhere to hide. But still, we are human beings and we want answers, and we want to basically squash the questions. We want this process to give us as many answers as it possibly can. And we're not, I think the process right now isn't celebrating those questions enough. So this is a really simple shift, but what I think that everybody should do, especially in their first round of object mapping, when you're analog, when you're on sticky notes, is make a parking lot of research to-dos and start writing down all those questions. You can even number them. So I did that in a really messy way here, but like when you get to, okay, question 1, whether you fit it on the sticky note, or I think it's great to just put it along the side and celebrate. Like, oh my God, we came up with like 9. There's actually more than that on here. There's 9 is just what I wrote down. 9 like really juicy questions that we need to come back to counselors with. And we need to really figure out like, how does your world actually work? Do you actually create resources? Like, do counselors author resources? If so, like, do you want those on the website? Do you recommend resources? Do you have like your library of resources that you wish you could just like pop up on the website and say like, these are the best things if you're dealing with homesickness? Make it look at some of these other ones. Like our events hosted by one main counselor. Do you have events that no counselors are hosted? Like, who's hosting these events? Is it important who's hosting these events? Do you want that to show on the website? Really understanding the relationship between the resources and the events. Like, we kind of conceptualize that makes sense in theory, but that's probably something to have a few conversations with the actual counselors on. Do your events usually have a resource associated with them? Do you have handouts? Are you talking about a book? Are you even like introducing a certain kind of app and like working through the app together? Who knows? Should location be an object? Whole other question. That's on whether like, do you imagine, because right now I think there's 2 or 3 There's like on the website, there's a main location and then 2 other locations, but it seems like there are rooms within the main location. So just some clarity around location. Just spots at the event ever fill up? Like right now, it's just a Google Calendar, and I don't think it's showing availability. But is availability something you want to track? Do events sell out even if they're mostly free? Do some events cost money? And then are all events public, or are there private events too? How does that work? Like group counseling, can anybody show up for those? Or do you have to kind of sign up and go through some sort of process? It actually wasn't that clear on the website. So we have a good amount of questions. Okay, so here's the main things. Lots of it was a big week last week. Mashing up I'm just going to keep calling it the spaghetti diagram. It's a little derogatory, but that's what it feels like. Mashing up and taking what's good of the spaghetti diagram, taking those crow's feet and bringing them into the object map, just getting straight into the object mapping right in the discovery round. And then second, adding lists. So going ahead and defining what is a list of each of these things. And then third, having your research to-dos parking lot and really celebrating all the questions that come out as you're doing this activity. Let me know what you think. Hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully this clears things up for the guys down in Huntsville. And for my current cohort, you guys know you're the beta round, so we are putting this airplane together as we're flying it. And thank you so much for your patience as I continue to iterate as we are learning this process.